I'm Rachel Bennett, 31, and I never imagined my baby shower would end with me sobbing in my car, mascara streaming down my face, my 7-month pregnant belly heaving with each gasp. What should have been one of the happiest days of my life became the moment I realized my family's love had always come with conditions. And that moment changed everything, not just for me and my unborn daughter, but for our entire family in ways none of us could have predicted. Hey everyone, before I dive into how my baby shower turned into a family nightmare, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If this family drama already has you hooked, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, the revenge that unfolds in this story might just be the most satisfying thing you'll hear all week. Sometimes family betrayal leads to unexpected justice. Stick around to see how karma came back around in the most perfect way. Growing up in suburban Boston, I always felt like I lived in my younger sister Amanda's shadow. Though only 2 years apart, we couldn't have been more different. Amanda was the golden child homecoming queen, straight-A student, and eventually a successful corporate lawyer by 27. Meanwhile, I was the artistic one, always a bit of a disappointment to my achievement-oriented parents, especially my mother Caroline. Mom never tried to hide her preference. When Amanda got into Harvard Law, my parents threw an extravagant party with nearly 100 guests. When I graduated from art school and landed my first graphic design job, Mom simply said, "At least you found something practical to do with that degree." Dad was kinder but passive, never standing up to Mom's obvious favoritism. The pattern continued into our adult lives. Amanda's accomplishments were celebrated lavishly. Her law firm promotion, her downtown condo purchase, her engagement to fellow attorney Blake. My milestones seemed like afterthoughts. When I met Jason, a kind and hardworking contractor who owned his own business, Mom's first question was, "Does he have a college degree? Not? Are you happy?" Despite all this, I maintained a relationship with my family. I told myself that blood was thicker than water, that family was family, regardless of favoritism. Jason would often encourage me to establish boundaries, but I'd brush it off saying, "That's just how she is." When Jason and I got married 3 years ago, Mom complained about our backyard wedding being quaint and questioned why we didn't choose a real venue like Amanda and Blake were planning for their upcoming wedding. What she didn't know was that we were saving for a house and starting a family dreams that felt more important than an expensive wedding. The real turning point came when I announced my pregnancy. While Dad seemed genuinely excited about becoming a grandfather, Mom's reaction was lukewarm at best. "Oh, that's wonderful news," she said without looking up from her phone. "Did you plan this or was it a surprise?" The implication being that we weren't ready for a child. Amanda's reaction wasn't much better. She seemed annoyed that my pregnancy would overshadow her wedding preparations. "You'll have to find a maternity bridesmaid dress now," she sighed, as if my pregnancy was an inconvenience to her wedding aesthetic. Still, when Mom offered to host my baby shower, I was touched. It felt like an olive branch, a sign that perhaps my child would help bridge the emotional distance. "Let me handle everything," she insisted. "You just focus on staying healthy for my granddaughter." The weeks leading up to the shower were filled with hope. Mom seemed enthusiastic about becoming a grandmother, asking about nursery colors and suggesting baby names. She even called me twice a week for updates on my pregnancy. It felt like we were finally connecting in a way we never had before. Jason remained skeptical. "Don't get your hopes up too high," he warned one night as we lay in bed. "Your mom has a way of making everything about her or Amanda." "She's really trying this time," I insisted, running my hand over my growing belly. "I think the baby is changing her. She's going to be a grandmother now." "I hope you're right," Jason said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. The day of the shower arrived with perfect spring weather. Mom had decorated her spacious backyard with pink and gold balloons, floral arrangements on every table, and a beautiful dessert spread that would make any Pinterest board proud. 30 of our closest friends and family members attended, bearing gifts and well wishes. Everything seemed perfect. For once, I felt like the center of attention in a good way. Even Amanda appeared supportive, helping me open gifts and taking photos. As I unwrapped onesies, blankets, and toys for my daughter, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in my family for years. But as the afternoon progressed, I noticed Mom constantly checking her watch and whispering with Amanda. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on my friends and the celebration. Little did I know they were planning something that would shatter the fragile peace and reveal exactly where I stood in our family's hierarchy. The baby shower was in full swing by 3 o'clock. We had finished the games, including a particularly hilarious round of Guess the Baby Food Flavor that had everyone in stitches, and moved on to opening gifts. I sat in the decorated chair of honor, a mountain of pink-wrapped presents surrounding me. My college roommate Sarah had just handed me a beautiful handmade mobile for the nursery when Mom clinked her champagne flute with a silver spoon. The cheerful chatter died down as everyone turned toward her. "Ladies, thank you all for coming to celebrate Rachel and my future granddaughter," Mom began, her voice carrying across the backyard. Her smile seemed genuine, and for a moment I felt a surge of gratitude. "Before we continue with the gifts, I have a special announcement to make." I smiled, assuming she was about to say something heartfelt about becoming a grandmother, or perhaps reveal a special gift for the baby. Instead, she motioned for Amanda to join her. As you all know, my younger daughter Amanda is getting married to Blake in just 2 months. Mom continued, placing her arm around Amanda's shoulders. And I wanted to take this opportunity, while we have so many loved ones gathered, to present them with something special. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach as Mom reached behind the dessert table and pulled out a large gift box with a golden bow. The box was wrapped in elegant paper with Bon Voyage printed in a repeating pattern. Amanda and Blake Mom said, her voice thick with emotion that I hadn't heard when she'd spoken about my baby. "Your father and I are so proud of the accomplished adults you've become. Your hard work, dedication to your careers, and commitment to each other represent everything we've ever wanted for our children." She handed the box to Amanda, who began unwrapping it with an excitement that suggested she already knew what was inside. The guests watched in confused silence. This was my baby shower after all. Inside the box was a smaller package and a large envelope. Amanda opened the envelope first and pulled out what looked like travel documents. "Your father and I are gifting you an all-expenses-paid 3-week honeymoon through Europe," Mom announced proudly. "First-class flights, 5-star accommodations in Paris, Rome, Barcelona, and Santorini, private tours, and a $5,000 spending allowance. It's worth $32,000, but you two deserve every penny." Gasps of awe rippled through the crowd. Amanda squealed with delight and hugged our mother tightly. "Thank you so much. I can't believe it." The smaller package contained a designer luggage set that probably cost more than Jason and I had spent on our entire honeymoon to a beach resort in Florida. I sat frozen in my chair, one hand resting on my baby bump, the other clutching a half-unwrapped onesie. The room seemed to spin slightly as I tried to process what was happening. Not only had my mother hijacked my baby shower to celebrate Amanda's upcoming wedding, but she had also chosen to present a lavish gift that vastly overshadowed anything Jason and I had ever received, including for our own wedding when we'd gotten a set of kitchen towels and a $200 check. What made it worse were Mom's next words. "Amanda has worked so hard to build her career and waited until the right time to start a family. We wanted to reward her responsible life choices with something truly special." The implication hung heavy in the air. Unlike Amanda, I hadn't waited. I hadn't prioritized my career or financial stability before starting a family. In my mother's eyes, my pregnancy wasn't an achievement to be celebrated. It was a poor life choice that paled in comparison to Amanda's carefully planned trajectory. The silence that followed was excruciating. My friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. Jason's mother, who had never quite warmed to my parents, pressed her lips into a thin line of disapproval. Even my father looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other at the edge of the gathering. Well, I finally managed my voice sounding distant to my own ears. That's certainly a generous gift. Congratulations, Amanda and Blake. I tried to smile to act as though this hadn't completely blindsided me, but my lips trembled with the effort. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. My friend Sarah, bless her heart, attempted to redirect attention. Let's get back to Rachel's gifts, shall we? There are still so many to open. But the damage was done. The joyful atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by awkward tension. Some guests began making excuses to leave early. Others overcompensated with excessive enthusiasm as I mechanically unwrapped the remaining gifts. Through it all, Mom beamed at Amanda, who couldn't stop talking about their upcoming European adventure. Neither seemed to notice or care how their moment had overshadowed what should have been my day. As the shower wound down, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Locking the door behind me, I finally allowed the tears to fall. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My mascara had already begun to run, and my cheeks were flushed with humiliation and hurt. A soft knock on the door startled me. "Rachel, are you okay?" It was Jason's voice laced with concern. I quickly wiped my tears and opened the door. One look at his face told me he understood exactly what had happened and how deeply it had wounded me. "Let's go home," he whispered, taking my hand. "We don't have to stay." But leaving meant admitting defeat, showing my mother and sister that they had hurt me. My pride couldn't bear it. "No," I insisted. "We'll stay until the end. This is still my baby shower." But it wasn't. Not anymore. And as I returned to the party with a forced smile, I knew something fundamental had changed within me. This wasn't just another example of my mother's favoritism. This was a public declaration of where I stood in our family's hierarchy of love and respect. As we drove home later that evening, the car filled with baby gifts, I finally allowed myself to break down completely. Between sobs, I turned to Jason and said words that would set everything that followed in motion. "I'm done trying to earn their love. It's never going to happen." Little did I know that decision would lead to consequences that would change our family forever. The days following the baby shower were a blur of emotions. I cycled through hurt, anger, embarrassment, and a deep, aching grief for the maternal relationship I'd never truly had, but had always hoped for. Jason found me crying in the nursery more than once, folding and refolding tiny clothes as if the repetitive motion might somehow order the chaos in my heart. "I just don't understand," I said one night, as we lay in bed, my pregnancy pillow wedged between us. "Who does that at someone's baby shower? Who humiliates their own daughter that way?" Jason sighed, reaching across to stroke my hair. "Someone who doesn't see how hurtful their actions are. Someone who's never had to face consequences for playing favorites." His words sparked something in me. Consequences. My mother and sister had never faced any real consequences for their treatment of me. I had always forgiven, always shown up, always played my part in maintaining family harmony, regardless of how I was treated. "I think I need to step back from them," I said finally. "Not just for me, but for our daughter. I don't want her growing up feeling second best the way I did." Jason nodded, relief evident in his expression. "I've been hoping you'd come to that decision on your own. You and our baby deserve better." The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I picked up my phone and typed out a lengthy email to both my mother and Amanda. I explained how hurt I'd been by what happened at the shower, how it reflected a pattern of behavior that had damaged me throughout my life, and that I needed space to protect myself and my unborn child. "I'm not cutting you out of my life permanently," I wrote, "but I need time to heal and establish boundaries. I won't be attending Amanda's wedding next month." I won't be sharing updates about my pregnancy or inviting you to the hospital when the baby is born. When I'm ready, we can discuss rebuilding our relationship on more equal footing." I pressed send before I could second-guess myself, then blocked both their numbers and social media accounts. The immediate sense of relief was overwhelming, like setting down a heavy burden I'd carried for decades. Of course, the peace didn't last. Within hours, Dad called pleading with me to reconsider. "Your mother is beside herself," he said. "She says she was just trying to do something nice for your sister and didn't mean to overshadow your shower." "Dad, you were there," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You heard what she said about responsible life choices. She deliberately used my baby shower to praise Amanda for not being like me." He was silent for a moment. "She doesn't always think about how her words come across. You know how she is." "That's the problem, Dad. Everyone always says that's just how she is, as if it excuses her behavior. Well, this is how I am now, someone who won't accept being treated that way." After Dad's call came the flying monkeys, relatives, and family friends who'd been dispatched to make me see reason. Aunt Judith insisted I was being hormonal and would regret missing Amanda's wedding. My cousin Michael suggested that cutting off family was never the answer. Mom's best friend Patricia actually had the nerve to say I was being selfish and making everything about me. I held firm through it all, repeating the same message: I needed space to heal and I wouldn't discuss it further. 2 weeks after the shower, a large package arrived at our door. Inside was an expensive baby stroller, the exact model I'd registered for, with a card from my mother that simply read, "I hope this makes up for any misunderstanding. Looking forward to meeting my granddaughter. Love, Mom." No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done, just a material gift meant to buy my forgiveness and ensure her access to her grandchild. I returned the stroller to the store, used the money to buy a less expensive model, and donated the difference to a women's shelter that helped single mothers. It felt like a small act of defiance, redirecting my mother's attempt at control into something positive. Amanda's wedding day came and went. I saw photos on a mutual friend's social media, my parents beaming proudly, Amanda radiant in her designer gown, everyone pretending that the family wasn't missing a member. I allowed myself one good cry, then focused on preparing for my daughter's arrival. As my due date approached, the pressure to reconcile intensified. Dad called daily, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly desperate. "Your mother's heart is breaking," he said in one. "Whatever issues you have with her, don't punish her by keeping her grandchild from her." It was the same old pattern. My feelings were secondary to Mom's, my boundaries less important than her desires. But this time, I had more than myself to protect. When my water broke 3 weeks before my due date, Jason and I went to the hospital without notifying my family. After 18 hours of labor, our daughter Lily came into the world, 6 pounds, 4 ounces of perfection, with a shock of dark hair and my blue eyes. Holding her in my arms, I felt a fierce protectiveness, unlike anything I'd experienced before. In that moment, I couldn't imagine treating her the way my mother had treated me. I couldn't fathom making her feel less than or using her to prop up a sibling's ego. The cycle would end with me. We sent a simple birth announcement to friends and family a week later, a photo of Lily with her birth details, and a note that we were taking time to bond as a new family and would not be accepting visitors for the first month. Mom's response came in the form of another package, baby clothes from expensive boutiques, each item more suitable for a doll than a real infant. The card read, "Can't wait to meet my granddaughter. We have so much lost time to make up for." It was as if she hadn't heard a word I'd said about needing space. In her mind, a grandchild was her right, not a privilege based on a healthy relationship with the child's parent. That night, as I nursed Lily in the quiet darkness of the nursery, I made a decision that would alter the course of our family forever. I wasn't just setting boundaries. I was reclaiming my power and ensuring my daughter would never feel the sting of conditional love. What I didn't realize was that my mother's actions at the baby shower had set other wheels in motion, ones that would eventually bring about a reckoning none of us could have anticipated. 3 months into motherhood, I was adjusting to my new normal. Lily was thriving, growing steadily, starting to smile, and developing a personality that seemed equal parts stubborn and sweet. Jason had taken extra time off work to help, and we'd fallen into a rhythm of teamwork that made me fall in love with him all over again. The distance from my family had been a healing balm. Without their constant judgment, I found myself more confident as a mother, trusting my instincts instead of second-guessing every decision. The only family contact I maintained was occasional phone calls with Dad, who had finally stopped pressuring me to reconcile with Mom and Amanda. On one such call, Dad mentioned casually that Amanda and Blake had returned from their European honeymoon. They had a wonderful time, he said, his voice wistful. Though there was some mix-up with the hotel in Santorini, your mother had to wire them extra money. I made appropriate noises of interest while feeling a familiar twist of pain. Even now, conversations with Dad inevitably turn to Amanda's perfect life. They're looking at houses now, he continued. Your mother's helping with the down payment. She says it's important for them to have space when they start a family. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom had never offered to help Jason and me with our modest home purchase, despite knowing we were planning for a baby. That's nice, Dad, I said, eager to change the subject. How's your garden coming along this year? After we hung up, I sat on the porch swing, watching the neighborhood kids play while Lily napped inside. The mention of Amanda's house hunt had stirred something uncomfortable in me. Not jealousy exactly. I'd long since accepted that Amanda would always receive more from our parents, but a nagging question about where this money was coming from. Mom and Dad lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. Dad had retired from his accounting firm 5 years ago, and Mom had never worked outside the home. A $32,000 European honeymoon plus a house down payment seemed like significant expenses, especially coming so close together. My train of thought was interrupted by a text from Sarah, my friend, who tried to salvage the baby shower. How's my favorite mama and baby girl? Can we get coffee this week? I have some gossip you might find interesting. We met 2 days later at a cafe near my house. Lily slept peacefully in her carrier while Sarah and I caught up. After updating me on her new job and boyfriend, she leaned forward conspiratorially. So you'll never guess who I ran into at my parents' anniversary party last weekend. Your Uncle Robert. I raised an eyebrow. Uncle Robert was my father's brother, an investment advisor who'd always been kind to me, but who lived on the opposite coast, making his appearances at family functions rare. He asked about you and the baby, Sarah continued. He seemed surprised when I mentioned you weren't speaking to your mom. Said something about how Caroline should know better, especially considering where the money came from. A chill ran down my spine. What money did he elaborate? Sarah nodded. That's the interesting part. He was a few drinks in and probably said more than he meant to. Apparently, your grandmother Miller's estate was much larger than anyone realized. When she died, she left specific instructions about how it should be divided. My grandmother Miller, my father's mother, had passed away when I was in college. She'd been a widow living modestly in a small apartment. I'd always assumed she had little to leave behind. Robert said your grandmother left equal amounts to both you and Amanda, Sarah said, lowering her voice. But it was supposed to be held in trust until you each turned 30, or if you got married or had a child, whichever came first. The implications hit me like a physical blow. I'd been married for 3 years. I'd turned 30 last year. I had a child now. By all conditions, I should have received my inheritance. How much I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Sarah hesitated. He didn't give an exact figure, but from the way he talked. Substantial. 6 figures, at least for each of you. Robert seemed to think your mother had been managing it all because your dad didn't want to deal with the financial details after his mother died. My hands trembled as I took a sip of my now cold coffee. If what Sarah was saying was true, my mother had withheld my inheritance money that was rightfully mine, that could have helped us prepare for Lily's arrival or buy a larger home. "There's more," Sarah said gently. "Robert mentioned that your grandmother adored you, said you reminded her of herself. She specifically noted that the money could be used for education, a home purchase, or to support artistic endeavors. It was like she wrote it with you in mind." Tears sprang to my eyes. Grandma Miller had always encouraged my creative pursuits, attending my art shows and praising my designs when Mom only saw them as a hobby. The thought that she'd tried to support me even after her death, only to have that support intercepted, was almost too painful to bear. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, mechanically going through the motions of caring for Lily while my mind raced. That evening after Jason came home and we'd put Lily to bed, I told him everything. "We need to find out if this is true," he said, his expression darkening. "If your mother has been withholding your inheritance, that's not just morally wrong, it could be illegal." The next morning, I called Uncle Robert directly. After an awkward greeting he clearly hadn't expected to hear from me, I decided on direct honesty. "I heard something disturbing about Grandma Miller's will," I said. "I'm hoping you can help me understand what happened." There was a long pause before he sighed heavily. I wondered if this would ever come to light. I told Caroline years ago that this would catch up with her eventually. Over the next hour, Robert confirmed everything Sarah had said and added details that made my blood boil. Grandma Miller had left $350,000 each to Amanda and me to be held in trust with specific conditions for release. Mom had somehow convinced Dad to let her handle the legal aspects, positioning herself as the trustee. "Your father trusted her implicitly," Robert explained. "He never questioned when she said the money was being invested for your futures." "But I met all the conditions years ago," I said. "Why wasn't I notified? That's where Caroline crossed a line," Robert admitted. "She made decisions about what constituted responsible use of the funds. When Amanda wanted money for law school, Caroline deemed that appropriate. When Amanda and Blake wanted to buy their first condo, that too was approved. And me, from what I understand, you never asked. And Caroline never offered." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "How could I ask for something I didn't know existed?" "Exactly," Robert said soberly. "That's why I've been uncomfortable with this arrangement from the start." "But your father insisted it was a family matter, and legally as trustee Caroline had some discretion." "Did that discretion extend to spending my inheritance on Amanda's honeymoon and house down payment?" I asked, my voice sharp. Robert's silence was answer enough. "I want documentation," I said finally. "Copies of the will, trust documents, account statements, everything. And I want to know my options for recovering what's legally mine." "I'll help however I can," he promised. "For what it's worth, I think your grandmother would be heartbroken to see how this is played out." After ending the call, I sat on our back porch watching birds flit around the feeder Jason had installed after Lily was born. The betrayal felt even deeper now, not just emotional but financial. My mother hadn't just withheld love and approval, she'd actually stolen from me to further elevate Amanda. Jason found me there an hour later, Lily sleeping against my chest. His face was tense with concern. "What do you want to do?" he asked simply. I looked down at our daughter, her perfect little fingers wrapped around my thumb even in sleep. In that moment, my path became crystal clear. "I want what's rightfully mine," I said, a new determination hardening my voice. "And I want them to face consequences for once in their lives." I had no idea then just how significant those consequences would be, or how thoroughly the reckoning would reshape our family. But as I sat there with my daughter in my arms and my supportive husband by my side, I felt something powerful taking root, a resolution that would ultimately lead to the most satisfying justice I could have imagined. Hey everyone! Can you believe what Rachel just discovered? I'm on the edge of my seat, wondering what steps she'll take next against her mother and sister. If you're as invested in this family drama as I am, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you've ever discovered a shocking family secret. The most explosive part of this story is still to come. Subscribe so you don't miss how Rachel gets the justice she deserves. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since before the baby shower incident. While Jason took care of Lily, I made 3 important calls. First to a family law attorney specializing in trust disputes, then to a therapist recommended by my doctor for new mothers, and finally to my father, requesting a face-to-face meeting alone. The attorney Diane Levinson was direct and efficient. After hearing my story, she requested that I gather any documentation I could find related to my grandmother's estate. In cases like these, information is power, she explained. Your uncle's testimony is valuable, but we need paper trails. Birth certificates, marriage license, your grandmother's will if possible. Anything that establishes the conditions of the trust and proves you've met them. I spent the next week in detective mode, digging through old papers, contacting county records, offices, and working with Uncle Robert to piece together evidence. What emerged was damning. Grandma Miller had indeed left equal inheritances to Amanda and me with explicit instructions about distribution. As suspected, Mom had systematically released funds for Amanda while keeping me completely in the dark about my portion. Most disturbing was a clause Uncle Robert discovered in the original trust document. In the event that either beneficiary remains unaware of their inheritance due to trustee negligence or malfeasance, all accumulated interest on said portion shall be added to the principal amount due. In other words, my mother's deception had actually increased the amount I was legally owed. Armed with this information, I met Dad at a quiet restaurant across town. He looked older than I remembered, with new worry lines etched around his eyes. When he asked to see pictures of Lily, I obliged, watching his eyes fill with tears at the sight of the granddaughter he'd yet to meet. "She's beautiful, Rachel," he said softly. "She has your eyes." "Dad," I said gently but firmly, steering the conversation to its purpose, "we need to talk about Grandma Miller's inheritance." His face fell, confirming that he knew exactly what I was referring to. "How did you find out?" I explained about Uncle Robert watching, as Dad's expression shifted from surprise to shame. "It was wrong," he admitted finally. "I knew it was wrong to keep you in the dark, but your mother insisted she was protecting you from yourself. She said you weren't ready for that kind of money, that you'd waste it on art supplies or traveling instead of building a secure future." "That wasn't her decision to make," I countered. "Grandma left that money to me with specific conditions that I've met. Mom had no right to withhold it, much less spend it on Amanda. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. Caroline has always had strong opinions about what's best for both of you. She believes Amanda's choices, her career path, her marriage to Blake, their financial planning demonstrate more maturity. And spending $32,000 on a luxury honeymoon demonstrates financial responsibility." I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "That was excessive," Dad conceded. "I told her so at the time. But you didn't stop her? It wasn't a question." He sighed heavily. "No, I didn't. I've never been good at standing up to your mother. It's my greatest failure as a father, not protecting you from her favoritism. Under different circumstances, this admission might have moved me. But now, with everything I'd learned, it felt too little, too late. I've consulted an attorney," I said, watching his face pale. "She believes I have a strong case to recover my full inheritance plus interest. But before we proceed legally, I wanted to give you and Mom one chance to make this right." I slid a document across the table, a formal demand letter Diane had prepared, outlining the facts of the case and requesting full accounting and immediate transfer of funds. "Rachel, please," Dad pleaded. "A lawsuit would tear this family apart. The family is already torn apart, Dad." Mom made sure of that at my baby shower, and every time before that when she made it clear Amanda was the favorite. This is just me refusing to be the victim anymore. He took the letter with trembling hands. What exactly do you want? Full disclosure of all trust accounts and transactions, transfer of my complete inheritance plus accumulated interest, and a written apology from both Mom and Amanda acknowledging what they did. Amanda might not even know about this, Dad protested weakly. Then it's time she learned where her charmed life came from, I replied. You have 1 week to respond to the letter. After that, we file suit. As I left the restaurant, I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and liberation. The path I'd chosen wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in my life, I was prioritizing justice for myself over peace for everyone else. Mom's response came faster than expected. That evening, my phone exploded with notifications, dozens of missed calls and text messages from both her and Amanda. I ignored them all, forwarding the voicemails to Diane for documentation. The next day, a formal email arrived from Mom's newly retained attorney requesting a meeting to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding amicably. Diane advised me not to respond directly, but to let her handle all communication going forward. Meanwhile, my family's reaction became increasingly desperate. Amanda showed up unannounced at our house only to find we weren't home. We'd anticipated such a move and had taken Lily to visit Jason's parents for the weekend. Mom began reaching out to mutual friends, painting me as an ungrateful daughter trying to extort money from loving parents. Most disturbingly, she created a social media post hinting that my postpartum hormones had made me unstable and that she feared for Lily's well-being. That last action backfired spectacularly. Several of my friends who'd witnessed the baby shower incident came to my defense online, calling out Mom's manipulation for what it was. Sarah even posted a scathing response, detailing exactly what had happened at the shower, which was shared widely among our social circle. The meeting between attorneys took place at Diane's office the following week. I insisted on being present, though. Jason stayed home with Lily. Mom arrived with both her lawyer and Amanda in tow a power play that Diane had prepared me for. Remember, she'd advised they'll try to make you feel guilty, outnumbered, and unreasonable. Stay focused on the legal and financial facts. The opening exchange was tense but civil. Mom's attorney, an older man with an aggressively patronizing manner, presented their position. While there had been a regrettable lack of communication regarding the inheritance, Mom had acted within her rights as trustee to make allocation decisions based on her assessment of our respective needs and responsibility levels. Diane systematically dismantled this argument, citing specific language from the trust documents that required equal treatment and explicit notification to both beneficiaries. She also presented a forensic accountant's preliminary findings, showing that approximately $410,000 of my inheritance had been diverted to expenses related specifically to Amanda, including the honeymoon portions of her law school tuition, the down payment on her first condo, and most recently a substantial contribution toward her new house. Throughout this presentation, I watched Amanda's face. Her initial defensive expression gradually gave way to shock and then something that looked almost like guilt. Mom, meanwhile, remained stone-faced, her jaw set in that familiar stubborn line I'd seen throughout my childhood whenever she was challenged. My client is prepared to pursue this matter through the courts, if necessary, Diane concluded. Given the clear documentation of breach of fiduciary duty, we're confident in our position. However, Rachel would prefer to resolve this privately, provided her conditions are met in full. Mom's attorney requested a brief recess to confer with his clients. When they returned, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. Mom looked defeated, and Amanda wouldn't meet my eyes. We're prepared to acknowledge that mistakes were made in the administration of the trust, Mom's attorney began carefully. My clients are willing to provide full accounting of all transactions and to arrange for the transfer of the remaining funds to Rachel, along with a reasonable interest amount to be negotiated. And the written apology, Diane pressed. My clients would prefer to resolve this matter without any admission of wrongdoing, he replied stiffly. I leaned forward. Then we have no deal. This isn't just about money, it's about acknowledging what was done to me. The meeting ended at an impasse. As we gathered our belongings, Amanda approached me hesitantly. Rachel, I had no idea, she said quietly. I swear I didn't know the money for my honeymoon came from your inheritance. Part of me wanted to believe her, but years of being the less favored sister had taught me caution. Would it have made a difference if you had known? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. 3 days after the meeting, Uncle Robert called with unexpected news. Your mother tried to withdraw the remaining funds from your trust account, he said. Fortunately, I had already alerted the bank to freeze the accounts pending resolution of the dispute. This desperate move proved to be Mom's undoing. Attempting to empty the accounts constituted clear-cut financial misconduct, strengthening our legal position immensely. When Diane informed Mom's attorney of this development, their resistance crumbled. Within 48 hours, we received a settlement offer full transfer of all remaining funds, approximately $280,000 compensation for the misappropriated amount plus calculated interest, an additional $215,000, and a formal letter acknowledging the mishandling of the trust. The only condition was a confidentiality agreement preventing me from discussing the financial settlement publicly. After consulting with Diane, I accepted the terms with one modification. While I would keep the financial details private, I would not be silenced about the emotional aspects of what had happened. My family's pattern of favoritism and my mother's manipulation were not covered by the agreement. The money was transferred the following week, a substantial sum that would secure Lily's education fund, allow us to purchase a larger home, and even provide seed funding for the graphic design business I'd always dreamed of starting. But more valuable than the financial windfall was the validation concrete proof that I had been wronged and had successfully stood up for myself. What I didn't anticipate was how the resolution would ripple through my family in unexpected ways. 1 month after the settlement, I received a text from Amanda asking to meet. Against Jason's protective instincts, I agreed to see her at a neutral location, a park halfway between our homes. She looked different, somehow less polished than usual, with dark circles under her eyes, and her typically perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She hugged herself as we sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. I've left Blake, she said, without preamble. Of all the things I expected her to say, this wasn't on the list. Amanda and Blake had been the perfect power couple, ambitious lawyers with a meticulously planned future. What happened? I asked, genuinely surprised. She stared at the water. After everything came out about the inheritance, I started seeing patterns I'd been blind to before. Blake reminded me so much of Mom, always calculating, always keeping score. When I told him we needed to return some of the money we'd received unfairly, he became someone I didn't recognize. She explained that Blake had insisted the money was legally theirs now, regardless of its source. His reaction had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about both their relationship and the privileged life she'd accepted without question. I realized I've been complicit in how you were treated, she admitted, tears forming. I enjoyed being the favorite so much that I never questioned the cost to you. I'm truly sorry, Rachel. Her apology felt genuine, but years of hurt couldn't be erased in a single conversation. I appreciate you saying that I said carefully. It means something, but trust will take time to rebuild. Amanda nodded. I understand. I just hope someday Lily and any children I might have can know each other as cousins, even if you and I can never be close again. As for Mom and Dad, the fallout was even more dramatic. Dad, finally forced to confront Mom's manipulative behavior, moved out temporarily to gain perspective. According to Amanda, he had begun therapy to address his lifelong pattern of enabling Mom's favoritism. Mom herself remained unrepentant. The formal letter acknowledging the mishandling of the trust was clearly written by her attorney with no hint of personal remorse. She made one attempt to see Lily showing up at our house unannounced 6 weeks after the settlement. When I opened the door, she thrust a gift bag toward me. "I have a right to know my granddaughter," she declared without greeting. "Actually, you don't," I replied calmly. "That's not how this works. Relationships with grandchildren are facilitated through their parents, and they're earned through respect and trust." "I'm still your mother," she insisted. "Yes, you are. And when you're ready to acknowledge the harm you've caused and commit to changing your behavior, we can discuss what kind of relationship might be possible. Until then, this conversation is over." I closed the door on her shocked face, feeling not triumph but a sad certainty that I was finally setting healthy boundaries. Over the following months, Jason and I used part of the inheritance to purchase a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a family-friendly neighborhood 20 miles away from my parents. I launched my own graphic design business, specializing in branding for small businesses, which allowed me to work flexible hours while caring for Lily. Dad eventually moved back in with Mom, but something fundamental had changed in their relationship. He began visiting us once a month, always alone, always calling ahead to ask permission. His relationship with Lily blossomed as he embraced being a grandfather on my terms rather than Mom's. Amanda and I established a cautious new connection, meeting occasionally for coffee or bringing our father along as a buffer. She went through with the divorce from Blake, moved to a smaller apartment, and even returned the remaining funds from her portion of the European honeymoon to my account, a symbolic gesture that meant more than the money itself. As for Mom, she remained the one unmovable object in our family's transformation. Unwilling to admit wrongdoing and unable to control the narrative any longer, she retreated into a bitter shell of herself. According to Dad, she had lost standing in their social circle after the baby shower story spread, with several longtime friends distancing themselves from her manipulative behavior. The final twist in our family saga came a year after the settlement. Grandma Miller, it turned out, had one more surprise in store. A small safety deposit box containing personal letters and a family heirloom ring was discovered during a bank merger. The box had clear instructions that it should be given directly to me on my 30th birthday, instructions that had been ignored along with everything else. Inside was a letter written in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting, dated just months before her death. "My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, I've been gone a while now. I've always seen myself in you, your creativity, your gentle heart, your quiet strength. I worry that these qualities aren't always valued in our family the way they should be. Remember that being different isn't being less. Your path is your own, and I've arranged for you to have the means to follow it wherever it leads." The enclosed ring was my mother's, and her mother's before that. It belongs to the women in our family who forged their own way. I believe that's you. All my love, Grandma. The ring, a delicate vintage piece with a small but perfect diamond, became a talisman of sorts. I wore it daily as a reminder that I had always been seen and valued, even when it didn't feel that way. When Lily is older, I'll pass both the ring and its story to her, along with the most important lesson I learned through all of this. True family is built on respect, not obligation, and love should never come with conditions. In the end, what happened at my baby shower became the catalyst for a painful but necessary reckoning. The $32,000 honeymoon that Mom gifted Amanda that day, saying those cutting words about responsible life choices, wasn't just an insult. It was the first domino in a chain that would ultimately reveal deeper truths, force long overdue consequences, and give me the chance to rebuild my life and family on my own terms. And that's a gift far more valuable than any inheritance could ever be. 5 years have passed since that fateful baby shower. Lily is now a spirited kindergartner, with her father's dimples and my artistic tendencies. Our house rings with laughter, especially since the arrival of her little brother Max 2 years ago. Last weekend, we celebrated Lily's 5th birthday in our backyard. Among the guests were Uncle Robert and his wife Jason's parents, several close friends with their children, and in a scene I once couldn't have imagined Amanda with her new partner Claire and Dad, who arrived separately from Mom. Mom came too, though our relationship remains formal. Time has softened some edges but hasn't erased the past. She's learning slowly that she can be part of our lives but not the center of them. She still sometimes slips into old patterns, bringing Lily extravagant gifts or making subtle comparisons, but now I address these behaviors immediately rather than suffering in silence. As I watched my daughter blow out her candles, surrounded by people who truly see and value her for exactly who she is, I realized that the greatest revenge against conditional love is creating a life filled with the authentic kind. Hey everyone, thank you so much for staying with me through this entire story. If you've ever experienced family drama like this, or learned valuable life lessons about standing up for yourself, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Has karma ever come back around in your family situation? I'd love to hear your stories. And if this tale of family justice resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that they deserve unconditional love, too. Remember, sometimes the family we create is more important than the one we're born into. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people who truly value you.